Hellbent. From prank calls that drove a man insane to a call from someone who disappeared, we count 10 creepy phone calls that'll make you fear unknown callers. Number 10. Possible call from the Zodiac killer. In September 1970, nurse Donna Lass disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her car was still parked outside of her apartment complex, but the 25-year-old was nowhere to be found. The next day, an anonymous male caller informed her landlord and workplace that she wouldn't be in that day because of an unexpected family emergency. However, there was no family emergency and Lass was never heard from again. Investigators suspect she may have been one of the many victims of the Zodiac killer, who it's assumed was the caller. Number 9. The Cutie Ken family harasser. In 2007, a group of 16-year-olds in Washington received strange and disturbing text messages from their friend Courtney Cutie Ken. Courtney claimed she hadn't sent them, but they were definitely coming from her phone. Soon after, someone started calling the Cutie Ken family, threatening to kill various family members and their pets. The family contacted the police, and again the calls are traced back to Courtney's phone. Police and the family suspected Courtney was behind it and playing some kind of sick joke, but the calls continued even when Courtney's phone was turned off and confiscated. The psychotic mystery caller continued to harass them and could describe things that the family were doing and what they were wearing. They even left voicemail recordings of family conversations suggesting they were close by. This harassment continued for nearly 5 months and the culprit was never found. Security experts believe the phone may have been hijacked using spyware. Number 8. I can see you. Reddit user Elliot509 received a disturbing phone call from a stranger whose voice they didn't recognize. When asked who was on the line, the caller said, "Why do you want to know?" Elliot was sure this was just a dumb prank, so he said nothing. The caller then said, "I can see you," which Elliot shrugged off, saying that it was a nice try, but it wasn't very original as far as pranks go. That's when things got weird. Elliot's house is near train tracks, and at that moment a train happened to pass by. The passing train could be heard on the phone at the same time. Elliot will never know if it was a creepy stalker or a well-timed coincidence because the caller hung up and was never heard from again. Maybe that's for the best. Number 7. The call that never happened. A teenage boy received a shocking voicemail after missing a call from his mother. In the voicemail, the boy's mother eerily whispers his name, then rustles around frantically as if she dropped the phone in a panic. Worried for his mother's safety, the boy rushed home and found his mother at home making dinner as usual. When he asked her about it, she had no idea what he was talking about and insisted she made no such call. The boy's mother wasn't a prankster, so he believed her. Still, the records indicated that the call definitely came from her phone. So either his mother had one too many muscle relaxers with her Chardonnay or something creepy was going on. Number 6. I don't know how to help her. A woman returned home and checked her answering machine, which is what they called voicemail in the 90s. Those were dark times. She discovered she had a message from a woman she didn't know, which isn't too unusual since you had to be a millionaire back then to have caller ID. It was something reserved only for the upper crust. But the sheer terror of living in the 90s wasn't the only thing scary about this story. The woman who left the message knew things about her, including her name, and told her that one of her friends had died in a car crash. She went on to say that she didn't know how to help the friend but sounded smug rather than concerned. The woman confirmed her friend was okay and deleted the message, assuming it was some kind of sick prank. 6 months later, her boyfriend had a car accident and killed the other driver involved. And wouldn't you know it, the circumstances of the crash were eerily similar to those described in the message. Number 5. Last words. In 2008, 19-year-old college student Brandon Swanson was driving home after a night out when he crashed into a ditch on a gravel road in Minnesota. Distressed, he called his parents to ask for a ride. Swanson's parents came out looking, but they had trouble finding him. His car wasn't where he said it'd be, so they spent the next 45 minutes on the phone trying to find him. Swanson told them he could see lights from a nearby town, so he was headed in that direction. That's when things took a devastating turn. Swanson suddenly yelled, "Oh shit!" before the call cut out. And that was the last anybody heard of him. Hundreds of volunteers and their dogs spent 120 days searching the surrounding areas and rivers, but only his car was found. His phone had continued to ring for 2 days after his disappearance, and there was no evidence of foul play. Phone records revealed that Swanson was nowhere near any town, so it's unclear what the lights he claimed to walk towards were. Number 4. Extraterrestrial call. In 1997, Art Bell, host of the paranormal radio broadcast Coast to Coast AM, received a strange and distressing on-air call from a man claiming to have worked at Area 51. The sobbing caller says he was a former Area 51 employee who was released on a medical discharge. He claims to have been on the run ever since and believed his former employees would triangulate on his position real soon. Terrified, the caller frantically unloads everything he knows about aliens and conspiratorial government plots. His distress sounds real and he seems to genuinely fear for his life. Suddenly, the connection is lost. Several minutes of dead air pass before a backup power system returns Art to the air. Speaking to a new caller, Art explains that the bizarre power outage has never happened in the entire history of the station, saying that someone obviously didn't want listeners to hear any more of the distressed caller's claims. The following year, comic book writer Brian J.L. Glass called in to take credit for the call. Skeptics believe he isn't the real caller and is only trying to disprove the first caller's claims. Number 3. Innocent man framed by anonymous caller. In 1931, insurance agent William Wallace received a telephone message at his local chess club. The message was from someone with a fake-sounding alias R.M. Qualthrow. Qualthrow wanted to meet up the next night to discuss insurance policies. The next night, Wallace went across town only to discover the provided address didn't exist. He went home thinking it was just a stupid prank, but he found his wife had been beaten to death. Police blamed Wallace and argued that he left the message to himself to fabricate an alibi. He was found guilty and sentenced to be hanged. Fortunately, the Court of Criminal Appeal overturned the conviction when some inconsistencies came to light. The guy who'd taken Qualthrow's call was adamant that he hadn't spoken to Wallace and that Wallace had no blood on him. A witness also came forward saying that they'd spoken to the victim minutes before her husband's tram had departed, which would make it impossible for Wallace to have committed the murder in time. Unfortunately, Qualthrow was never identified, but he may have been one of Wallace's former insurance firm colleagues. Allegedly, neighbors saw him wearing bloody gloves and hosing down his car on the night of the murder. Number 2. Decade of phone harassment. In the early 80s, Bashir Kochachi, a former political hostage, left Lebanon to open a Moroccan restaurant in Washington, D.C. Not long after, some strange and persistent anonymous phone calls came in. You might dismiss these as harmless pranks, but they kept coming in for an entire decade. Anywhere Kochachi went, the calls followed. They came to his restaurant and even to the private lines of his family and friends. The caller's voice was soft like a child, so they referred to the caller as l'enfant, or to Americanize it a little bit, the infant. The calls ranged from demands for money to obscenities and death threats. Anyone associated with Kochachi was a target, even his pregnant spouse and restaurant employees. The abuse even turned physical when the Star of David was scratched all over Kochachi's Mercedes. The FBI traced the restaurant's phone, confirming that l'enfant was real, but they couldn't catch him because the calls came from different payphones at such high volumes that more than a single person had to be responsible. Kochachi became deeply distressed, barely sleeping, and developing psychosomatic disorders. In 1987, he voluntarily checked into the psychiatric ward and has been there on and off ever since. Number 1. Caller predicts presidential assassination. On November 22, 1963, a Californian switchboard operator received a strange call at 10 a.m. from a whispering woman. The woman claimed that the President of the United States was going to die in 10 minutes. When 10 minutes passed without incident, the woman changed the time to 10:30 a.m., which coincidentally is when McDonald's stopped serving breakfast. Sounds like a certain someone was about to robble the president of his life. She also made cryptic remarks about a fire in the Supreme Court and a government dictatorship, so obviously the Fry guys are in on it too. The operator dismissed the crazy ramblings because the president receives multiple death threats every single day. President Kennedy was, at the time, traveling in a motorcade towards Dallas's Dealey Plaza. Then when McDonald's stopped serving breakfast, Lee Harvey Oswald, or the Hamburglar, or the government, or whoever, assassinated the president, proving the woman's prediction right. Conspiracy theorists believe the caller was actress Karen Kupcinet, whose dead body was discovered 6 days after JFK's assassination. Kupcinet may have had advanced knowledge of the Kennedy murder plot because her father was friends with Jack Ruby, the man who shot Oswald while he was in custody. Speculation aside, the true origins of the call were never determined, but it does go to show that all anonymous tips should be taken seriously, even the batshit insane ones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.